Royal finance. Both Richard and John needed to raise huge amounts of money during their reigns, and they had multiple sources of income to achieve this. The sheriffs, also known as the Shire Reeve, worked for the king and were responsible for collecting taxes in their shire. They were very wealthy men, as they only had to send the king a fixed amount of money and were able to keep any excess for themselves. The king had many ways of raising money. In 1207, a tax on movables and incomes was introduced by King John. This taxed the income and movables of every man at a rate of 1/13 of their value. Penalty to pay this resulted in seizure of movables and imprisonment. This was a very unpopular policy, so John only demanded it once. Royal domain was land owned by the king that was often used for hunting. They were strictly regulated, and people had to pay for hunting rights, facing harsh punishments if they broke the rules. The king also made money from knights. Scutage was money paid by knights in order to avoid military service to the king. King John had raised the scutage levies 11 times, even when there was no call to fight. Tallage was a tax levied by kings and barons. It became known as a land tax and could be levied to the baron's liking. It was paid by peasants, so was associated with being lower class. Peasants could not appeal the high amounts demanded of them. This meant it was a major burden on ordinary people. Feudal incidents were a series of payments that lords had the right to collect. For example, lords would demand aid money to assist them with financial difficulty. Alienation was when lords would replace a tenant. As this required the lord's consent, he would also charge a fee. Lords could take the profits of the land of a deceased tenant until a relief was paid by their heir, which allowed the heir to then take possession of the land. This was known as prima season. If a deceased tenant's heir was a minor, the lord would become responsible for him and make money from his eventual marriage, and if the tenant died without an heir, the lord was entitled to keep their land. Many of these feudal incidents were unpopular, as they added to the financial burden over inheritance and increased the lord's control over ordinary people.